Welcome back, everybody, to Justice and Cannabis. I'm your host and co-legal director of the Justice Lab, Sean Farrell. With me, as always, is my partner in crime or in law, Jeffrey Hossman, my co-legal director and my co-host for tonight. Happy New Year, everybody. Welcome back. We thought it would be quite fitting to kick off the new year with our State of the Cannabis address. Last week, Governor Hochul delivered her State of the State. And in it, she gave us some key tidbits or key victories that we were finally hoping for. Yeah, better late than never, but never late is even better. So tonight, we're going to talk about not only the promise of what was supposed to have been delivered with the legalization of cannabis, but we're going to talk about the reality, where we're at now and where we're headed here, and what we need both our governors, our legislators, and you to all do. So let's kick it off. Jeff, one of the promises of the legalization of cannabis was having a bunch of CAURD licenses, right? That's a conditional use adult retail dispensary license. A mouthful, right? The short of it is, basically, you want to shop, you need to get a license here. Was that promise fulfilled?
So the CAURD license came out of something that the Office of Cannabis Management wanted to do. So the law itself talked about social and economic equity licenses and how those were going to work. And initially that was going to be minority-owned businesses, woman-owned businesses, distressed farmers, disabled veterans. There's going to be a whole host of folks that the law contemplated having special dispensations for in the licensing process. The Office of Cannabis Management took a look at it and said, you know, the people that were most harmed by what happened in the state of New York, by all the anti-cannabis enforcement, these are folks that have cannabis convictions. So they set up a program, this CAURD license, you said it's quite a mouthful, C-A-U-R-D. And the idea was that you had to have a cannabis conviction. Initially, they had it be in the state of New York, but there's a legal problem with that, so they had to kind of expand it. And you also had to demonstrate that you had successfully owned and operated a business that was profitable for 2 years.
Right.
And the whole idea behind this is that the state was going to give out 150 licenses, and they literally were going to build the dispensaries for these individuals. They were going to...
There was a fund for that, right? If
Correct.
I'm not mistaken,
this
about
was
$200
called the
million.
DASNY Fund. That's the Dormitory Authority of the State of New York.
Right.
This is the organization that built all of the dormitories at the state-run universities across the state, and then over time has just grown to take over the entire real estate portfolio of the state. There was a little bit of a conflict of interest at the beginning, we believe, because a gentleman that was on the Cannabis Control Board was the head of DASNY. So it was very interesting that this program got created and said, okay, we're now going to give you hundreds of millions of dollars to go build these dispensaries. The problem was that it was going to be orchestrated where the state put in $50 million, and they were going to somehow go and get $150 million of financing from somewhere, from the ether, from some investors. And that never happened.
Nothing happened.
Well, some things did happen. I don't want to say nothing happened, but certainly 150 dispensaries were not built for these licensees. What ended up happening is about 20 or 30 individuals ended up leasing what are called DASNY stores. So the state did lease the properties or buy them and build out the dispensary, and then there's some question into how good of a deal they gave these folks, you know, as far as the rent, as far as the percentage rate they were going to pay on the money for the build out and all of these types of things. It's a little bit of a push and pull there. It was a big difference from saying we're just going to build your dispensary and here you go. So anything was a little too much. People did complain about the interest rates, although I would note that cannabis is still illegal federally in the United States, and you really weren't going to get better interest rates on this money than what they were offering. It's still very high compared to what other businesses could get, but that argument, you know, where were you ever going to get money at this rate in cannabis? But it didn't matter. They didn't build the 200 dispensaries. Like I said, I think somewhere around 20 or 30 stores opened in these DASNY spaces. But as we're going to kind of talk about here, this was a tremendous promise that the state made. We're going to roll out this program. And those of you who have these convictions, who probably don't have connections to capital networks, who probably don't have a way smartly or non-predatorily to raise the money for your store, we're going to help you with that key piece of the situation. We're going to take the most expensive piece of the puzzle of you getting open, that is your retail store, and we're going to take that burden off of you. And that was clearly a promise made by the state that they absolutely did not deliver on.
So there's a couple moving parts there. One is we certainly didn't get the 150 stores. In fact, from what you just said, it's about 20, 30, so we are woefully short of that, to say the least, right? And that might be putting it pretty nicely. The second part is there's no fund. Nobody has any money from which they can pull from to support their store or build out any other store. So that's two.
Exactly, and just to jump in on that, that was even supposed to be something that is completely separate. So again, the idea of having, we may talk about this a little bit, incubators and low or no interest loans to make available to these licensees, that is something that is clearly reflected in the law that we have not made good on. I do note, as you kind of mentioned, that the governor has proposed perhaps really taking some more steps towards that. But again, it was something that is in the law, that we're now going to come up on the 5-year anniversary of the passage of the law. A lot of this has really not been implemented. I do want to say, however, that the licenses were given out. Now the question may be, what good is a license if you don't have the resources to be able to open the store? But at least New York did do something that no other state had done. No other state has had as forward-thinking of a program to give licenses to the people that were really impacted by the anti-cannabis enforcement in the state.
Well, you hit on 2 points. So we're going to take two parallel tracks at the same time. So stay with us for a second. So one part of it is, I get what you're saying. The justice impacted folks have had a chance to actually have a license and actually try to move forward with this. But there is some legal issues with that, some constitutional challenges as it relates to that, is there not?
So there's all kinds of challenges to everything. One of the lines that I've been saying pretty much the whole way we've gone here in New York is that you have to make your regulations so that they're not easily challengeable.
Correct.
If you make a regulation that to any attorney clearly violates the U.S. Constitution or clearly violates the cannabis law, does something different, and CAURD was no different. In the cannabis law, it said the first retail dispensary application period had to be open to everyone at the same time.
Correct.
What did the office do instead? They did CAURD first. And again, not that CAURD wasn't good, but they did not open the first retail dispensary application period to everyone at the same time. They did CAURD clearly first.
Correct. And
the only way you could possibly have qualified for CAURD, as we said, you had to have that cannabis conviction. So by definition, it wasn't open to everyone at the same time, and so it made it very easy for attorneys to come in and sue and get injunctions. You just go to the judge. Judges have cases about everything. No judge can be an expert in everything. So if it's easy to go to the judge and say, Your Honor, here's the law where it says the application had to be open to everybody, and here's what they actually did where they made it clear you had to have a cannabis conviction to even qualify. The judge says they didn't follow the law, injunction, right? And that delays everything, and it makes it harder to get money. You may already have a lease, and then you have an injunction for 6 months while you're paying money on your lease, waiting for the injunction to get lifted so you can proceed with opening your store. This is what happens.
So what you're talking about there is a violation of the Dormant Commerce Clause, essentially here. And we're seeing challenges both in the First Circuit up in Maine, that area, Second Circuit here in New York, as well as the Ninth Circuit. And so that's a whole legal mess. And the other parallel track, just before we finish out here, is the fact that with all these holes and gaps here, we've seen just an explosion of illicit stores here. At last count, there's some estimates between 3,000 and 4,000 illegal stores just in New York City alone. I mean, I can't imagine if we add in the rest of the state. So what is the call to action that we need to abide by at this point? What do we need?
So the issue here was when you legalize in a state, you can do it one of two ways.
Talk to me.
You can legalize first and then build the infrastructure to open your market second, which is what we did here in New York. Or you can start building the infrastructure, get ready for it, and then legalize.
That would have been smart.
Well, I mean, it's tougher to do that, and particularly when you have a lot of people getting arrested for cannabis.
Sure.
It's tougher to do that. And New York, that had New York City, which was the worst city on planet Earth for anti-cannabis enforcement, they said we're going to legalize first, and then we're going to build the plane as we're flying it. The unfortunate problem with that is that New Yorkers are very crafty.
Yeah.
And so you had bodegas that were already selling loosies anyway. You know, they got a joint or two under the counter. And then they said, I heard cannabis is legal now. You know what? I'm going to take it out from under the counter and I'm going to put it behind me on, you know, behind me when I'm standing at the cash register. And nobody got busted. And they said, you know what? I'm going to take out a row in my store. I'm going to put cannabis in that and see what happens.
Yeah.
And nobody got busted. So they said, you know what? I'm going to rip out all my coolers and everything, and I'm just basically going to become a cannabis store. And that is what happened in New York. Cannabis was legal, but there were no stores where people could get it. And so New Yorkers are crafty. They want their cannabis.
And they want it now.
And they want it now. And the purveyors of cannabis in the state said, we're going to get a way to get it to you. So yes, this is a tremendous problem. The legislature finally realized they had a problem after 2 years. We were telling them for the first 2 years of the program, you got to fix this. They didn't. They finally are listening now. I'm working with a number of groups that are dealing with this. Later this week, I'm having a meeting with Senator Liz Krueger and the NYPD and the sheriff to really start getting people focused on this. But this is what we got to do. We got to get the right people to talk to your elected officials. If you care about this, you go and talk to your elected officials, and they got to pass more rules that make it tougher on the illicit cannabis stores.
So here we are. We have the call to action. One, we need emergency legislation now. We need something that's going to fix this, that's going to be clear, that's going to be fair, and going to streamline this process here on how you get licenses. The next thing we need is we need all the players, all the stakeholders here to crack down on illegal shops. The people doing it the right way, they should be supported. That should be pushed out into the open, and that's where we should focus on. Everybody who's not, I'm sorry, but we can't keep that. If we have a legal market here, this is where our focus should be. This is where our efforts should be. And the last thing is money. We know this is a money game, right? This is all about capitalism. We need capital here. So the governor, I know you said in the state of state that you're going to give money to this effort, this endeavor here. Well, now it's time to talk the talk, but more importantly, walk the walk. This is Justice Cannabis. I'm Sean Farrell. This is Jeffrey Hoffman. Spark and change.
From handcuffs to paychecks,
NYC's $3.5 billion cannabis industry needs you.
while 94% of marijuana arrests hit people of color,
The legal market is booming with over 60,000 jobs coming online. That's where Cannabis in the City comes in.
we're bringing you real talk
Real stories,
and real justice from the front lines of New York's cannabis transformation.
from Let's Talk Cannabis to our Corner Boys segments.
We're breaking down the scene with truth, tools, and community.
Watch justice-impacted New Yorkers turn their lived experience into career opportunities.
Subscribe to Cannabis in the City on YouTube. Let's spark the conversation.